Hey guys, welcome back to part 8 of the 10-part Intro to Java Programming tutorial series. In this episode, we will talk about input. We'll talk about how to retrieve input from a file. So we'll read a file and we'll do some manipulation on that. So if you're enjoying the series, please go ahead and give it a like. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please leave them down below. If you're enjoying this, please go ahead and share with your friends. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it. So in the previous tutorial, we talked about classes. We did a deep dive into classes, and this is important for this episode. So if you haven't seen that, please go ahead and just watch that. I'll leave a link above. And let's go ahead and just talk about retrieving input. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a new file. So go ahead and just press Control-Option-N, and this will give you this new prompt here. You can also right click in the folder directory and press new file. But for now, let's go ahead and just create a new file. So we're going to name this file input.txt, and this will be the file that we read in to our program. So we're going to be using the Java libraries to read this file in. For the first line, we're just going to go ahead and type in this is a new file, and for the next line we'll say this is the end of the file. So we have two lines. The first line is this is a new file. Second line we'll just say this is the end of a file, and this will help us when we write the program since we'll want to see it reading. So the next thing we will do is we're going to create a brand new class. So we're going to move away from our Hello World class that we've been reusing. We'll create a new file, and we could call it whatever we want. So again, Control-Option-N should bring up this prompt, and we will create a new Java class. So go ahead and press Enter, and we'll say that this is a class, and we will name this class whatever you want. I'm just going to call it My Program. You can call it whatever you want. It does not matter. No need to add the java.java extension since IntelliJ will take care of that for us. So we're just going to go ahead and press Enter. And here we see that IntelliJ automatically created a new class for us called My Program. So as with our previous Hello World, we need to create the main method. So we'll go ahead and type that out. As before, the syntax for that is just public static void main, and we will just say this is args. And if you guys remember, the reason for that is because Java will actually look for this method whenever we try to run a program. And now we will create the reader for the file. So if you haven't seen that classes tutorial, please go ahead and watch that. Again, I can't strongly recommend since this will probably not make too much sense if you don't do that. So Java has some built-in libraries for us to be able to manipulate files and read them into our program. So as with classes, if we just go back to our previous example of employees, Java has things defined like a file. They've also defined things like readers and stuff like that. That way we can reuse their code. So a file has these different like attributes. Readers have different attributes and methods. So we're going to just reuse that for our program. So the first thing we need to do is we need to define a file object. So we're going to call file, and Java has these built-in libraries, and one of these is this java.io library. There's a bunch of different ones, as you can see here, that are built in that we can just reuse. No need to reinvent the wheel. And this is just the Java input output library, and we're just going to use the file object. So we can go ahead and press Enter. If you do not press Enter, then you will need to import this class yourself. So this import statements tells Java exactly where this class is. So if it doesn't know where it is, if it's not in the same directory, so if you remember with our calculator, it was within the same directory, then you need to tell Java where it is. And Java does this by using something called packages. And these packages will tell Java where to find your file, or rather, where to find the class. So we did this import java.io.file, and here we're creating an object of type file. So we're going to say file, and we can just call it my input. You can also call it my file. It doesn't matter what you call it. We'll just call it my file is equal to, and remember, we always use the new keyword in order to instantiate an object. So we're going to say file, my file equals new, and then file. And then we need to tell Java exactly where our file is. Since our file is in the same directory as the program that we're running, or rather the same folder, we can just reuse the name of our file. So I believe we called it, and I'm just pressing Shift again. I believe we called it my input. Let's see. This is the end of the file. Yeah, so we actually called it input.txt. So make sure you put in the name of the file that you called it. So we'll say input.txt. So we created a file. Now we will be able to do things with this file. So we created this file. Now we need to use another Java library in order to read the file. So now we have a file. Now we need to somehow read it. So the next thing we will do is create a file reader object. So we will say file reader. And this is something that Java provides for us, and we'll call it file reader is equal to new file reader. And close. So now we see that there's this error here, and it seems like this file reader is expecting something from the constructor. So if we go back to the example, we remember that a constructor can have arguments, and it cannot have arguments. Like, it really depends on what you're building. But if we look here, it seems like this is expecting an argument. So what is it? If you do command and click on this, this will give you a list of what it expects. So we'll just hit command and then click on that. And we see that you can provide a string, you could provide a file, you could provide a file descriptor. It looks like it takes in many different arguments. So we're just going to say, hey, I have a file reader and I want you to read this file. And we know that judging by what this takes as a constructor, we know that it supports file. So we're just going to say, great. I already have up my file, and this file reader will read my file if I provide it. So I will say my file. Let's see what this is here. So it looks like this throws an exception. So exceptions in Java are essentially any errors that can occur while the program is running. And one thing that we need to do is, and let's not worry too much about these errors, is just say that if this is going to throw an error, then we can either do something about it, or we could just have Java exit and fail. So we'll just say throw, this says throw an error. So we'll just say, yeah, throw java.io file not found exception. So we'll just say throws up here. Throw, rather, sorry, not there. This will go here. Throws file not found exception. And now this error should go away. So let's not worry too much about these exceptions for now. This is just a way of making sure that our code will handle any issues that arise. So we'll just make sure that we write this throws file not found exception as part of the method definition. So the most important part here is that we've created two objects. The first is a file, and the second one now is a file reader. And now we need to actually read this file. So we need to now create a buffered reader. And we could just call this buffered reader or reader. It doesn't really matter. We'll just say buffered reader. And this is what will allow us to read the file line by line. So now we can, and this is a piece of code, by the way, that you can reuse over and over again. You can also create your own little reader class and just have these lines in here and then just return all the output of a specific file. So there's multiple ways to do this. We're just using a different way or just one of the approaches. That way you guys can learn how to do that. So we're creating this buffered reader, and like always, again, the new keyword. So we're saying buffered reader, the name of the variable equals new, and then again, buffered reader. And now again, we see this error here, and we can just say command, and then we can click on the buffered reader class. And this tells us, hey, I'll take a reader object. So we do have a reader object here. We have this file reader. So let's pass that in. So now we have our three objects. We have a file. So imagine this, and let's see if we can kind of draw this out. Let's say new. Okay, so now we have three different objects. So we have a file. Now we have this thing that will read the file. So we'll just say that this will take our file and read it. And then we put that into a buffered reader, which will say, hey, I will take one of the lines from your file and I will print that out, and I'll wait until you tell me to read another line, and then I'll give that to you. I'll read another line from the file and give that to you, and read another one and give it back to you. So this is essentially the power of having different objects and different types of classes to separate the different concerns. So let's go back here, and now we will read our file line by line. So the first thing that we'll do is write our while loop. So if you remember, we had a while loop, and open and close parentheses, open and close braces, and here we'll have our condition. So the first thing we'll do is say while and first we'll have to say we need to instantiate a string. We'll just say string, and we'll call this line. And then we'll say the line is equal to, line is just empty here, and we'll define it in here. So we'll say while the line, which is equal to buffered reader dot read line, is not empty. So remember, this is a conditional here. It's not empty. So null will be empty in this case. And let's see what this error is here. So this throws another exception. It's an IO exception. So we need to throw file not found exception. We also need to throw another one, IO exception. And again, please, let's not worry too much about these exceptions for now. This will get it working. We can leave some reading down below. The goal is to kind of understand these classes and these objects. So now we have defined this line, and each time in our while loop, it will say, hey, this line is the next line. So I'm just going to read the next line. And while that is not empty, I'll continue reading. The moment it's empty, then we know that there is nothing left in the file. So we can go ahead and exit this loop. So we will print out our line by line. And then at the end, we can just say I'm done. And this will ensure that we've read every single line in the file. And at the end, we'll say that we're done. So this is the full program here. So we're just going to go ahead and run that. So I will go ahead and say, let's just run this main method here. And then we should see some output below. So let's take a look and see what happened. So it says here, input.txt not found. So it actually cannot find our file. So let's see what the issue is. Here we see that we are telling Java to read our input.txt file. So we may actually need to specify the directory that it's in. So this is in source/input.txt. And let's try this again. All right, guys, there we go. So Java was looking in the parent directory of our project folder. So we need to specify the path that it's in. So it's in source/ and then input.txt. You could go ahead and just copy that if you named it the same as mine. And here we see this is a new file. This is the end of the file, and then I'm done. So if we go back and look at our file, we can just say here, this is the file that we read. This is a new file. This is the end of the file, which we see here. We can open up my program, and this code was able to read in our file and perform some operations on that. All right, guys, so that does it for this tutorial. I know this was a lot to take in, so feel free to take a break and feel free to do some further reading to try and understand. If there's any questions I can answer, please go ahead and leave your questions down below. In the next tutorial, we will get into reading a file. We will use our calculator class to do some computation, and then we'll print the stuff out to the screen. So that takes care of it. Again, please go ahead and give this a like, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.